Alexa.
Hello.
So great to see you. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you for having me. I'm so
Excited to see your brain.
I'm so excited to see my brain.
Version 2.
Version 2 will be better than version 1, I hope.
Version 1 was nuts. You want to know what's going on in your brain.
Mm-hmm.
Heavy anxiousness,
Mm-hmm.
stress, some depression, cognitive issues, and you've been struggling with chronic Lyme for a long time.
Yeah, like I've had crazy symptoms for about 11 years.
That's a long time.
Yep.
And depression, light sensitivity. I think you may have something called Berlin syndrome. You were in a car accident when you were 17. In that, panic attacks. You're an intense empath. So you feel the pain of others.
Literally everything.
Childhood trauma. You've seen a therapist. You've taken medicine. You've done a lot to get well. When you came, we scanned you. So SPECT is a study that looks at activity in the brain. It looks at how your brain works. It's different than a CAT scan or an MRI. They look at the structure of your brain, and the structure of your brain is fine, but it's working way too hard. Before, when we looked at your brain, the outside was beautiful. I mean, healthy. I
somehow
don't really see a bad brain injury anywhere. But the inside was on fire. Like something I had actually never seen. It almost looked like you have a seizure disorder because there's so much activity there, and your cerebellum's healthy, but right on both of your temporal lobes, it's just working way too hard. No wonder you're anxious. No wonder you don't feel good. And people like, go breathe. And I'm like, I'm a huge fan of breathing. But it's like, no, I have to figure out a way to calm that down. So I don't calm it down, you're not going to feel healthy. You're not going to feel yourself.
For sure.
Now, since last year, you have done things. We'll talk about what you've done. And you saw my friend, Dr. Cornish, who I love.
I love Dr. Cornish.
And that dramatic overactivity has calmed down. Now, you still have too much activity here in the front, which means you probably still worry and hold on to things. And if things don't go a certain way, it bothers you. And there's probably still some anxiety and trauma. But it's a much more normal
It looks
scan
more normal.
for someone who sees me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fun.
What have you done since last March when we first met?
I recently got a concussion about 5 weeks ago, and I texted you, and you recommended I go to hyperbaric. So since then, I've done 20 sessions, which is a good amount. And there's a bunch of studies on hyperbaric. I'm sure you know that it heals Lyme and all these things. So
I published one.
You did. Of course you did. Okay, I need to read it. Send it to me after. But so I'm 20 sessions into that. The concussion was super crazy, but
Tell me about it.
I've had even since I've seen you, I've had pretty crazy flare-ups to a point where in July, my whole body literally shut down. Like I had crazy slurred speech. I could barely even speak. I had no energy to even leave bed, do anything. That was like July and August. And that was because when I saw you, I made a bunch of changes, but I was also overwhelmed and I really didn't feel good at the time. And I was like trying to process things. And I've paid a lot of attention to alcohol. Not that I ever really drank a lot, but I've noticed even one drink makes me feel so sick. So sick. And it'll be not just for that night or for the next day. It can last for 5 days to 3 months. Literally. One martini. So I used to tell myself, oh, it's fine if I have one. But it's like really not. And sure, I was 28, now I'm 29. And I'm like, I want to be young. I want to have fun. But I've shifted my perspective of...
I'm sorry. Remind me what happened when you were 17.
So I got into a car accident. I was on my way to school, turning right out of Starbucks. And basically I got hit by a driver that was going 90 miles an hour.
Holy smokes.
So they were on the way to school. My car was completely totaled, like spun around. I blacked out. And I just was like in my car so confused. This wonderful woman in a red car. I saw a red car and this woman was like getting me out of the car and I had no idea what happened. And I was like so confused. And I don't even remember fully everything. I went in the ambulance. It was like a whole situation. So thinking back to what just happened, when I got everything I always think of always goes back to that. And I have terrible anxiety driving, like the work. I literally have to do breath work and put like an aura around the car of safety. I'm safe and protected all day. But I don't even know how I drive, but we figure it out. We're good. Actually, I'm a good driver. But with hitting my head, someone asked me if I've ever had a concussion. And I was going to say no. And then I was like, wait. And it's interesting because I was on the driver's side. So with the impact when I was 17, because you never forget that, I just heard the loudest sound I've ever heard. And I thought I went deaf in my left ear. And then it was my left side. Like I still have a scar over here on my arm. And that's when everything started. Like light sensitivity, everything. So thinking back, I was like, it's more than likely I had a concussion in that car accident.
Do you remember when you got bit by the tick?
I don't know exactly, but I've done the amount of doctors I've seen, and like I've tried to go back and remember. All I know is it was right here, and I remember it was there for a while, and I thought it was a mole because I was like, "Ooh, what's this weird thing?" And then one day, it's gross, but one day I just kind of picked it off, and I was like, it was black and bloody, and I was like, I'm just gonna put that in the toilet and forget about it and move on. But also, like a lot of my Lyme, like it all affects my brain. A lot of my stuff's neurological, like even with the light sensitivity and with like literally my entire left side's been numb it started 3 years ago, the numbness, but in the last 6 months, I'm like, come back, like please.
It's Lyme.
Yeah.
So if I asked you to list the 10 biggest emotional traumas in your life, what would you say?
Okay. Birth father, alcoholic, drugs, things. Him and my mom got separated when I was 18 months. With that, there's just a large level of abandonment, which I've begun to immensely face. I texted him last week and was like, hi, like, why have you never apologized? I'm confused. Literally just sent the text because I had a realization a year ago that if he had just sent an apology message or letter or something, it would allow me to release this something that I still was holding on to. Because forgiveness is the biggest power we possibly have in life. Forgiving others, forgiving, whether it's unconditionally or whatever, forgive for you. So I have tried really hard to forgive him, but it's like a daughter and a dad. Like, it's hard to fully forgive. So I wanted an apology. And then I received a message from him immediately when I asked for an apology, literally a week ago. I was watching a movie and I felt inspired and I was like, cool, why not? Because it's complicated, but he was sort of in and out of my life when I was younger, but completely inconsistent and always disappointing, always. And obviously you can't get disappointed without expectations, but as a kid, like you have expectations of your parents to an extent.
Of course you do.
Yeah, so I sent that a week ago, and then he immediately responded with blame and I was like, "Oop, this is why he's not in my life." And then 6 days later, he sent the most perfectly, beautifully crafted message I could have ever asked for. And I immediately was like, he didn't write it. That was my immediate brain, was to say, he didn't write it, this isn't him. Because in the week before, I was like, do you have a therapist? Because he was just saying all these things. I was like, hi, this is me asking. I don't need you to blame 65 other people. Like, take accountability. And then he sent a message literally like a week ago from today. And he said, like, it was all me, I'm to blame, blah, blah, blah. Sent like beautifully crafted to where a therapist had to have written it. He thought about it. And
maybe he asked for help.
For sure.
Because he wanted.
For sure. And what's interesting, I still haven't really processed it, but I feel like that was the one of the big things in terms of like emotional traumas in my life.
Okay, so dad.
That's a big one.
And then the traumatic brain injury.
Brain injury. Car accident was a really bad one. There have been many. These are
When
that's like
you
5 or 6 so
see
far.
somebody for EMDR,
Yeah.
make the list
Okay.
and go in and go, I want to get these out of my nervous system.
Yeah.
Because they live in your nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
I think of it sort of like mushrooms without the side effects.
I like mushrooms sometimes. You don't like them?
No.
A tiny bit for healing.
And what do they do for you?
I feel like they just allow, I don't really do anything ever because my body can't handle anything. But a couple years ago, I did like a tiny little dose and a couple times. And they just allowed things to come up. It felt in a safe way. That's the best way I can explain it. And I think it also, of course, depends on like who you're surrounded by and whatever. But my intention with them was only for healing and surrounded by like a shaman or in a safe environment. I don't know. I feel like they just allow things to come up without it being scary.
Although for some people, scary stuff comes up.
Very scary stuff comes up for some people.
Yeah.
For sure.
I mean, I get to see people who have
After.
a bad trip and it triggers trouble.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they're not always safe.
That makes sense.
The driving anxiety would be one I would put.
That's a bad one. For sure.
All right, my dear.
Yay.
Any other questions?
No, I'm excited. We think I can heal? Do you think I can heal?
You do what I say.
Okay. Perfect. That's it. Moving on.
Like you're coming in with just such a different mindset. It's like, my favorite word is iterate. It's like, do it, see what happens, and change. Do it, see what happens. Keep what's good, dump what's not. Keep what's good, dump what's not. Keep what's good. You have a lot of your brain is healthy.
Beautiful.
Before it was nuts. It was screaming hot.
I know.
I'm like, never seen anything like this.
That's crazy. I'd like to not be numb. That'd be really nice. That's one of my goals this year. But I think mindset is huge. The only reason I'm able to do everything I do is because of my mindset at this point in time. And the thing that holds me back is my mindset.
No negativity.
Yeah, can't. I think that's also a shift because I didn't think I'd ever feel better. And now I know I will feel better.